My name is Susan Harper. I'm 29, a financial advisor running my own firm, Harper Wealth Fund, here in Spokane. I had poured my heart and my expertise into funding my sister's wedding at the Davenport Hotel's grand ballroom. I'd paid for everything, from the elegant floral arches to the shimmering lights and the pristine table settings. I walked into the reception, my heels clicking on the polished floor, fully expecting a seat among my family. But there was nothing. No place card, no chair reserved for me. My parents exchanged a brief glance, then chuckled. "Oops," my dad said, "guess we miscounted." The room seemed to erupt in soft laughter. I could feel the guests' eyes on me, hear their mocking whispers. My chest tightened, but I forced a smile, scanning the tables one last time. There was no mistake. I had been erased. The sting of their laughter burned deeper than I can possibly describe. I had paid for every detail of this night, yet I stood there as an utter outsider. My parents' casual dismissal, that smug miscounted, echoed in my head. I clenched my fists, took a sharp breath, and said, "It seems I'm not family, after all." Then I turned and walked out, their laughter fading behind me. In that moment, I knew I would do something they would never, ever forget. What I did next left them speechless, but you'll have to stick around to see how I turned their laughter into shock. If you've ever been sidelined by your own family, you know how this feels. Drop a comment below. Hit subscribe to join the drama. Trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming. To understand why that moment broke me, you need to know my family. Growing up, my sister Julia Harper and I were inseparable. 3 years older, she was my entire world. Brilliant, beautiful, always the star. When I was 7, I'd trail after her in our Spokane backyard, trying to mimic her cartwheels, begging to borrow her glittery hair clips. She'd just laugh and braid my hair, teaching me how to charm our teachers with a smile. We aced school projects together, built blanket forts, and whispered our secrets under the stars. I idolized her, always stepping back to let her shine. If she wanted the last cookie, I'd hand it over, beaming when she hugged me. Julia was my hero, and I was her devoted shadow. As we got older, things began to shift. Our parents, Ronald and Diane Harper, started treating us very differently. When Julia was 16, she got a whole new wardrobe for her debate team finals, paid for by Dad. I wore her hand-me-downs. My requests for art supplies were brushed off as frivolous. "Finance isn't a real career," Mom would say whenever I talked about my passion for investments. "Julia's path in advertising is so much more practical." They'd beam with pride when Julia pitched her ideas, even when her campaigns flopped. In college, Julia's projects, ads for local startups that mostly tanked, still earned her dad's cash for essentials like designer bags. The savings from my part-time jobs went unnoticed. I'd overhear them bragging about Julia's potential at family dinners, while my straight-A report cards got little more than a nod. Julia's career stumbled early. A major advertising pitch failed spectacularly when her client called her work careless, costing her agency a big contract. Yet, Mom and Dad stood by her, praising her drive and covering her overdue bills. My own passion for finance, though, was met with constant skepticism. I remember being 19 and showing my dad a plan for a stock portfolio, hoping he'd finally see my ambition. As a doctor, he valued predictability. He just scoffed. "That's far too risky, Susan." Meanwhile, Julia got a check for a flashy ad idea that never even saw the light of day. The double standard cut deep, but I held on to the belief that family always came first. I reached out to Juliet, desperate to recapture some of our childhood closeness. I'd text her about her work, offering to review a client's budget with my finance skills. She'd brush me off with a smug, "No need, little sis."
Mom and Dad adored her confidence, blind to her crumbling projects. My own achievements? Earning a scholarship, landing my first financial client, barely registered. They'd call Julia their visionary, while I got a distracted, good job. Still, I kept showing up. I sent holiday cards, invited Julia for lunch, hoping they'd one day notice my worth. That fragile hope kept me tethered, even as I felt more and more like a stranger in my own family. The gap between us only widened in our 20s. Julia's career sputtered. Another failed campaign, a missed promotion. But Mom and Dad kept bailing her out. They'd call her our star, while my internships at financial firms and late nights studying the markets went completely unnoticed. I'd share a success, like a client win, and get a half-hearted, "That's nice, dear." Julia's flops, however, were always valuable learning experiences. I felt like a permanent outsider at home, but I clung to the idea that family sticks together. I kept the door open, sending cards and making calls. Deep down, I think I still believed they'd eventually value me. Looking back, I see how naive I was. The favoritism wasn't just unfair, it was a wedge, slowly slitting us apart. Julia soaked up their adoration, and I was left fighting for scraps of approval. I kept trying, kept hoping, but the cracks were there, waiting to shatter everything. After college, I carved my own path. By 29, I'd turned Harper Wealth Fund into a recognized powerhouse in Spokane's financial scene. My office buzzed with clients, local entrepreneurs, families planning their retirement, all trusting me to grow their wealth. I'd sealed a deal with a tech startup that doubled their investment in a year, earning a mention in the Spokane Business Journal as a financial trailblazer. I led seminars, mentored young advisors, and watched my firm's name light up the downtown skyline. Every late night spent analyzing markets felt like a victory, proof that I didn't need my family's approval to succeed. But when Julia got engaged to Kenneth, I saw a chance to mend our fractured bond by helping with her wedding. Mom called me one autumn afternoon, her voice sharp. "Julia's wedding is at the Davenport Hotel. You're covering the costs." I agreed, thinking my contribution might finally earn their respect. As a financial advisor, I managed the venue's deposit for the Grand Ballroom, renowned for its crystal chandeliers. I dove into the planning, hand-picking blush peonies for the centerpieces, their soft petals chosen to match Julia's romantic theme. I selected warm string lights to drape across the ceiling, ensuring they'd cast a golden glow over the tables. Every decision felt like a potential bridge back to my family's heart.
My parents and Julia, however, had their own agenda. They'd picked the Davenport as the venue and set a guest list of 200, inviting distant cousins and colleagues to bask in the event's grandeur. They reveled in the planning. Mom boasted to relatives about the perfect location, and Dad praised Julia's knack for picking just the right crowd. My role, funding the entire reception and selecting the decor, went utterly unnoticed. I texted Julia, excited about the peonies I'd chosen. "Looks fine," she replied, her tone completely flat. When I suggested adjusting the guest list to manage costs, Mom shut me down. Julia knows who matters. Their focus stayed entirely on Julia, their pride in her choices unwavering. I poured myself into that wedding, believing my efforts would finally matter. I wired the payment for the venue, ensuring every detail was flawless. I spent hours with the lighting crew, confirming the string lights would create the exact ambiance Julia wanted. At a family barbecue, I mentioned the floral arrangements, hoping for a spark of appreciation. Dad just raised his glass to Julia's vision, ignoring my work entirely. Mom gushed to guests about the Davenport's elegance, never once mentioning who was paying for it. I stood there, smiling, my chest tight with the weight of their indifference. The unfairness cut deeper than I ever expected. Late at night, I'd stare at my laptop, the wedding budget glowing on the screen, wondering why my sacrifices were always invisible. I'd call Mom, asking if she liked the effect of the string lights. She'd say, "Julia's making this so special," brushing past my question. I kept going, finalizing the floral order, making sure every peony was perfect. I thought funding the reception and crafting its beauty would show my love, would finally make me part of the family. But they just soaked up the event's splendor, the venue, the guest list, while giving Julia all the credit.
I felt like an outsider, my contributions erased. Still, I clung to the hope that my work, every dollar and every light, would make them see me. I pictured the wedding day, imagining them finally thanking me for bringing it all to life. That hope kept me tethered, even as it began to fray. The wedding day started with a betrayal. I arrived at the Davenport Hotel, my heart heavy but hopeful, dressed in a navy gown I'd chosen to blend into the elegance of Julia's big day. The ballroom sparkled with the peonies and string lights I'd selected, a testament to the funds I'd poured into the event. As guests mingled, I scanned the seating chart, my stomach twisting when I saw no place card with my name. I checked again, heart pounding, and found nothing. A server confirmed it. No seat for Susan Harper. Despite paying for the venue and crafting its beauty, I had been erased.
Fury surged through me. I marched to the venue manager, my voice steady but sharp. "I'm canceling the contract I signed for this event," I said, loud enough for nearby guests to turn and stare. "The Harper family can cover the costs themselves." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Mom's face paled. Dad froze, his champagne glass mid-air. Julia, in her glittering gown, stammered, "Susan, what are you doing?" The manager hesitated, then nodded, pulling out the paperwork. My family scrambled, promising to settle the bill, their composure crumbling before 200 guests. I stood tall. The weight of their disregard fueled my resolve. In that moment, Nathan Brooks, my friend and a sharp-eyed accountant, had texted me a warning. "Check your savings." I trusted him implicitly since our college days, so I logged into my account during a quiet moment before the ceremony. My blood ran cold. $200,000 was missing, siphoned from the account I'd built through years of hard work at Harper Wealth Fund. Nathan met me in a side room, his laptop open. He whispered, "I traced it. Julia, Kenneth, and your parents accessed it through a forged signature." He showed me the bank records, transfers linked to Kenneth's email, a clear paper trail leading to a real estate deal for a house in Seattle. They'd planned to use my money for their new life, assuming I'd never notice. I felt the world tilt. My own family, who'd ignored my every sacrifice, had orchestrated this theft. Nathan's evidence was ironclad. Emails between Kenneth and Dad discussing the loan, Julia's login on my account, Mom's name on a deposit slip. They'd counted on my silence, on my loyalty. But that betrayal, the missing seat, the stolen savings, it snapped something inside me. I wasn't their doormat anymore. During the reception, as the toasts began, I stepped to the microphone, my hands shaking, but my voice clear. "I have something to share," I said, my eyes locking on Julia's. The room fell silent, forks clinking against plates. I paid for this wedding, the venue, the flowers, the lights. But my family left me no seat. Murmurs spread through the ballroom. I held up Nathan's printouts, my voice rising. They also took $200,000 from my savings to buy a house, forging my signature. I pointed directly at Julia, Kenneth, Mom, and Dad. This is who they really are. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Julia's face crumpled, her mascara smudging. "Susan, stop!" she cried, but her voice was drowned out by the crowd's murmurs. Kenneth stood, red-faced, muttering excuses. Mom clutched Dad's arm, her eyes wide with panic. Dad tried to speak, but a guest cut him off, demanding answers. The room buzzed with disbelief, relatives exchanging stunned glances. I set the papers down on a table, letting the evidence speak for itself. My family's shame was laid bare, their perfect image shattered before their entire social circle. I walked out, the weight of their betrayal lifting with every step. They'd laughed off my absence, but now they faced the consequences of their own greed. I didn't look back. A week after the wedding, I dug deeper. The Davenport Hotel fiasco had left my family scrambling to cover the bill, but I couldn't shake the image of Julia's forged signature on my savings account. Nathan Brooks met me at a quiet coffee shop downtown, his laptop open on the table. "I pulled the records," he said, sliding it over. The screen showed a clear trail of transfers, $200,000 siphoned to an account under Kenneth's name. Julia had signed my digital approval, even mimicking the loop on my S. Nathan had traced it to a real estate agent in Seattle, a down payment for a house. They used your money, he confirmed, his voice a low blow. He'd also found forged contracts from Julia's agency, fake ad deals with ghost clients, all to inflate her income and secure the loan. My stomach churned. Julia's advertising firm, her small outfit in Spokane, had been her lifeline. Now it was all a lie. Nathan dug further, uncovering gambling app receipts linked to Julia's card, debts piling up from online poker sites. She's in deep, he said. The house in Seattle was their escape plan. I gripped my coffee cup, the betrayal sinking in. My family had stolen from me, using my trust to fund their crumbling dreams. Nathan printed the documents, his brow furrowed. You have everything you need to fight this. I nodded, my mind racing. This wasn't just theft, it was the end of whatever bond we had left. The next day, I drove to Julia's office, a sleek building off Riverside Avenue. Her receptionist hesitated when I asked for her, but I pushed past, my heart pounding. Julia looked up from her desk, her face paling as I slapped the printouts down. Explain this, I said, my voice cold and even. She glanced at the papers, then back at me, her eyes darting toward the door. Susan, it's not what you think, she started, but I cut her off. You forged my signature. You took $200,000 for a house with Kenneth. And these contracts? Fake ad deals to make your income look real? She shifted in her chair, her fingers nervously twisting a pen. We needed it, she admitted, her voice small. You have so much with your fund. I thought you owed me. For always being the successful one, for always having it easy. Owed her. The words hit me like a physical slap. I leaned forward, keeping my tone steady. I paid for your wedding, Julia. I chose the flowers, the lights, everything, and you left me no seat. Now this. She met my eyes, a flicker of defiance in her gaze. You're always the good one, Susan, the perfect sister. We just needed a boost. I shook my head, the hurt hardening into steel. That's not a boost. That's stealing. She opened her mouth to argue, but the door burst open. Mom and Dad stormed in. What are you doing here? Mom demanded, her voice shrill. Dad glared at me, his doctor's coat rumpled. You've already ruined the wedding. Now this? I stood my ground, holding the papers. They stole from me, Mom, forged my signature for $200,000. Mom's eyes widened, but she turned to Julia, her voice instantly softening. Is that true, honey? Julia nodded, tears welling up. Dad exploded. You're selfish, Susan. Always making everything about you. Julia's your sister. She needed help. Mom joined in, her finger pointing at me. You destroyed her day, canceling the venue in front of everyone. And now you're accusing her? Family supports each other. I stared at them, their words landing like blows. Support. You left me no seat at her wedding, I said quietly. You ignored every effort I made. And now you defend this? Dad's face reddened. You're ungrateful. Julia is struggling, and you're too busy with your money games to care. Mom nodded, her eyes cold. You broke her heart with that stunt. We raised you better than this. Their words echoed the old painful pattern. Julia, the perpetual victim, me, the villain. I felt the anger boil, but I kept my voice calm. You raised me better than to steal from your own daughter. Dad stepped closer, his voice low and threatening. You'll regret this, Susan. We're family. I met his gaze without flinching. Not anymore. I turned back to Julia, who looked away. Keep the money, I told her, but you're on your own now. I walked out, the office door clicking shut behind me. Their shouts faded as I reached the car park. Nathan was waiting in his car. What happened? He asked. I slid in, the papers clutched in my hand. They admitted it. They defended it. Nathan started the engine. What now? I stared straight ahead at the road, my resolve hardening into something unbreakable. Their next move was desperate.
Days after I confronted Julia, whispers started circulating in Spokane's business circles. A client called me, his voice tight, saying he'd heard I'd mismanaged funds at Harper Wealth Fund, funneling money into risky ventures. Another emailed, citing concerns about my ethics. I traced the rumors back to an online forum post, anonymous but dripping with details only someone close to me would know, my client list, my recent deals. Then, a local business journal received a tip, accusing me of falsifying records. The source was an email linked to Kenneth, with a forwarded thread from Julia's work account. They were trying to torch my reputation, to ruin the firm I'd built from nothing. I sat in my office staring at the accusations, my hands trembling. Harper Wealth Fund was my life. Years of late nights, client trust, and meticulous work. Julia and Kenneth thought they could dismantle it to save face after their theft was exposed. I called Nathan, my voice steady, despite the panic rising in my chest. "They're coming for my business," I told him. He arrived within an hour, his laptop ready, eyes sharp with focus. "They're sloppy," he said, pulling up a digital audit trail. Nathan had been monitoring my accounts since the wedding, anticipating their retaliation. He found a forged financial statement, stamped with my firm's logo, that had been sent to a major client from an IP address tied to Kenneth's home office. "It's a setup," Nathan said. "They're claiming you misreported profits to inflate your books." He dug deeper, cross-referencing the statement's metadata. It led right back to Julia's advertising agency, where she'd used her work server to draft the fake document. He uncovered an email chain between her and Kenneth, plotting to leak the accusations to my clients and a regulatory board. "They're banking on you staying quiet," he said, handing me a USB drive with all the evidence, screenshots, timestamps, IP logs. I clutched it, my resolve hardening. "Not this time," I said. Nathan's work was a lifeline, proof that their lies couldn't stick. I spent the next week fortifying my defense. I met with my firm's lawyer, a sharp woman named Claire, who specialized in financial disputes. She reviewed Nathan's evidence, nodding as she flipped through the pages. "This is airtight," she said. "The forgery is traceable and their intent is clear." I pulled every record from Harper Wealth Fund, client contracts, tax filings, audit logs, ensuring every transaction was clean. My team worked overtime, double-checking portfolios to counter any scrutiny. I contacted key clients personally, explaining the false accusations and sharing Claire's legal assessment. Most stood by me, their trust earned through years of proven results. One client, a restaurant owner I'd helped for years, texted me, "I know you, Susan. This smells like a vendetta." With my firm secured, I turned to Julia's actions. Her fake ad contracts and gambling debts, uncovered by Nathan, were only the start. I hired a private investigator to dig deeper into her agency's finances, suspecting more fraud. The investigator found inflated invoices sent to clients, with payments funneled to offshore accounts to cover Julia's mounting losses. I compiled a dossier, bank statements, forged contracts, debt records, detailing her deceit. Every document was a weapon, a way to expose her beyond the wedding's fallout. I drafted a letter to her agency's board, outlining her misconduct, and prepared a public statement for Spokane's business community. I wasn't just defending myself anymore. I was ready to show the world who Julia really was. Mom and Dad called, their voices shrill over the phone. "You're destroying Julia's life," Mom said, her tone accusing. Dad chimed in, "Your firm's fine, just let this go." I hung up. Their words felt hollow. They hadn't cared when Julia stole from me, but now they were begging for her. I sat at my desk, the dossier in front of me, my heart steady. This wasn't about revenge. It was about justice. Julia and Kenneth had tried to bury me, but their own lies were going to bury them instead. I sealed the letter. My plan was set. The truth was ready to come out. I made my final stand. Weeks after Julia's attempt to tarnish my reputation, I learned she was pitching a major ad campaign to a tech startup, banking on a loan from Harper Wealth Fund to keep her agency afloat. The CEO, a client I'd advised for years, called me to confirm the deal. I reviewed the proposal. Julia's numbers were inflated, her promises shaky, relying entirely on my firm's backing to secure the contract. I saw my chance. I met the CEO at a sleek Spokane bistro, laying out the truth about Julia's forged contracts and gambling debts. "I can't fund this," I said, formally pulling my firm's support. The CEO nodded, understanding immediately,
and canceled the deal. Julia's agency, already on thin ice, lost its last lifeline.